Hi, and welcome to Schema Stories. My name is Mark van Berkel, and I'm here today to interview Mark van Berkel. Schema Stories are all about bringing real people's stories to life that are working in the area of schema.org, semantic search, to make it more real, more than just technology. So Mark van Berkel joins me as the creator of Schema App and also my co-founder of Hunch Manifest. Mark, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Mark, tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about your background.
So I suppose I started working in 2001, 2002 as a programmer, and spent several years as a consultant and doing some enterprise software, and then 2005 started a master's degree where it was basically semantic technology, and probably about half the credits were going towards like ontology design and engineering, as well as doing a proof of concept for SAP research labs. And so that was where I got familiar with semantic technology, and then spent a couple more years in the industry, and then in 2012 started a company, and just quickly figured how can I now apply semantic technology, because the application of the software and technologies had gone to a point where it was productive use for a business and industry, where when I was studying at the university, it was still fairly theoretical, the tools weren't there, weren't ready to support it. So yeah, long history in consulting as well as technical product design.
Excellent. And so a lot of people know you most as the creator of Schema App, although they hear my voice and see my face, but you're the one who came up with the idea. So tell us a bit about sort of why you created Schema App and how it came to be.
So there was the schema model, basically, the Schema.org group had published all of their recommendations as this kind of graph model. So RDFA, which is just a way to structure the actual classes and properties and how they all relate together. So this is coming from the semantic technology world. So the kind of the graph relationship, and I've been working in that technology, as I mentioned, productively in 2012 and onward. And so it was 2014, I believe. I was in the summer. I had created I kind of put two and two together. We were doing a bit of digital marketing consulting at the time, and I figured that there's probably ways we can consume this model and put it to good use. So because I had the familiarity of the graphic database, I did some transformations and figured out how I can plug it into this tool set I'm using. And so I was able to figure out, okay, well, I can create this generator and this kind of having all this way of creating and managing your schema data. And it was around that time that where the schema group decided to adopt JSON-LD as a format, which played right into the tool, because then you're not mucking around in the HTML, where JSON-LD is this the format where it's nice and clean, so I can then export it. So so I was just kind of figured out that there was this this opportunity to get this generator going and do the work for our clients. So created it for myself originally, and started whenever Google got on board with JSON-LD, then I made it public, and that's kind of fast forward to today.
I still remember when you went and spoke at Semtech and were excited about what you had created, but everyone kept saying, "You're too early. You're too early." You know, no one doesn't support the JSON-LD.
That's right. It was a little early. So it was a conversation with Aaron Bradley at Semtech, where I was like, you know, I wanted to show him, because I reached out to him ahead of the conference and said, I have something I'd like to show you, and basically he said, like, have you seen a rich snippet yet? And the answer was no, but so Google hadn't been rewarding that format in syntax yet, so a little early, but you know, there were some other uses for it, so I didn't kill it yet, and then we figured that format was coming down the pipeline as something that would be more broadly accepted for the rich snippets. So now today, JSON-LD is the preferred format for Google. So all the bells and whistles are there with JSON-LD, especially when you talk about email actions and some of the other kind of off-site JSON-LD that's the only way you can interact for email actions, and microdata is nowhere to be found.
So since you first started kind of thinking about semantic technology back in 2005, a lot has changed, both in the landscape about the application and how useful it is to everyday folk. I don't think back then you would have ever thought you'd have a conversation with a marketer about semantic technology. And we're continuing to see a lot change even in the search landscape. What are you most excited about in sort of the changes going on in the semantic and schema world?
The semantic technology is just a huge kind of conversation because it's got so broad applicability. So
maybe we pause and say, like, how do you define semantic technology?
Yeah, so even that's kind of loose, but I particularly go into it's kind of the NoSQL group of databases that drive the technology. So primarily, I think about like the graph relationship or the property model kind of relationship databases. So they underlie a lot of the technologies that semantic technology would be built on because of their flexibility to describe the relationships between things. So semantics is all about figuring out like what's the meaning behind the words, and you need a really flexible way to describe your concepts, such as in Schema.org. They had provide some flexible ways to describe the relationships between all the things, all the properties. And so that's kind of one area of semantic technology. There's other areas where you talk about like neuro-linguistic programming, where you're trying to pick up the meaning of words and try to pick out maybe people, places, and things out of unstructured data. And there's some other kind of areas of semantic technology, but what I'd like to kind of steer the conversation, if you will, towards is this the semantic search marketing, or the more of the Schema.org kind of structured data part of the semantic technology. So we build Schema App with semantic technologies, and the schema part kind of is something that sits into it. So from that vocabulary and from that area, there's still a lot of opportunities. So Schema.org started with like rich snippets. So like at first you could provide information about a recipe or an event online, and then there was products and the little stars, and then it kind of got interesting where Google acquired MetaWeb, I think it was called, the creators of Freebase. So they were also born out of like that same era. They were very early, 2007. I think they were created and acquired in 2012 roughly, where they just have this giant database of concepts and relationships between those and things. So it was popular in like the movie industry and all this stuff. So that got really interesting, where then Google consumed this as part of its knowledge graph. And so then in the couple of years since then, we see Google just like pouring so many SERP engine results pages from their knowledge graph. So where do they get the knowledge graph? From Freebase, from Wikipedia, Wikidata these days, but also from Schema.org. So just having, originally Schema marketing and so on was geared from those rich snippets, but now we have the knowledge graph. So that was kind of the second, and this is like fairly well untapped, I'd say, to this point. Most marketers see the low-hanging fruit of the rich snippets or rich cards today, but marking up the rest of your content, whether it be about certain types of events, or getting into maybe certain services and things that don't necessarily, services is a better example, that don't generate a rich snippet, but telling someone that you're a consulting company and you have like 5 lines of business and there's different services that you offer, can be very important to get Google to understand what the concepts are in your business. So just providing schema just for other concepts outside of those Google features is a big area that has yet to be well tapped. But in addition, we got some other things like, so there's linked open data or open data is like just has a lot of government and other types of industries where they're publishing data sets about the things that they're doing, or within cities, maybe it's the sidewalks and all the geographic kind of locations of sidewalks, or it might be around like, forestry or whatever. Like there's just 64,000 open data sets I saw in the tool I looked at last week, of things available in all across like a lot of the Western countries, as far as I know. So like the UK is heavy in the open data for the United States government, and then in Canada there's a bunch of cities that are doing a lot of open data. So to kind of bring this around, like they're all kind of like siloed chunks of data, which might be fine if you're like really interested in a narrow niche, but how can they better describe those data sets with schema is kind of the question I'm interested in the next year or two, because schema is a vocabulary that they can unambiguously declare like what the data set is about in the rows and all the concepts. So why not use this existing vocabulary to describe all that open data? And then there's a bit of work already being done in the UK around the job postings. Their open data group has approved schema.org job postings as the vocabulary of their open data. So we can see that coming more and more importance in the kind of months and couple years to follow.
And so you're thinking sort of as they standardize how they mark up their open data, that open data then gets connected with the overall knowledge graphs, and then all of a sudden you have this like multi-myth knowledge graph?
Well, yes. Okay. So the knowledge graph, I mean, it's not singular. It's not one knowledge graph. Like Google has their knowledge graph. They have an API, but there's lots of other companies that have knowledge graphs. So Microsoft and Bing have their knowledge graph, and Yahoo has their own separate knowledge graph. And there's like, I don't know, probably many dozens of companies have their own knowledge graphs, like especially around their specific domain, and maybe go very, very deep. And they would, I'm sure, like to consume some of this other data, and if it's more readily available to the world with a common vocabulary, it's easier to consume. So so that can feed into the knowledge graphs of many companies, including Google.
So one thing that we've heard in our Schema Story interview with Mike Arneson, but then also in some other conversations with Aaron Bradley and about semantic analytics. Mm-hmm. And I know you spend a lot of time kind of thinking about semantic analytics. Can you talk a bit about sort of what you're excited about, or sort of where you see the possibility there?
Yeah, so it's an interesting area. So primarily it's kind of let's make Google Analytics let's take Google Analytics and kind of extend it with your data. So right now it's kind of an almost completely anonymous data, talking about like generic concepts that every website has. Like it's a user has certain characteristics like their location, or maybe what application they're using to browse it, or what phone or whatever. And then there's like the sessions and the length of things, what pages they went to. That's all generic stuff. So semantic analytics is taking basically that semantic data, or that structured data in schema.org primarily is what we're talking about, and injecting that into Google Analytics so that you start having a more rich description of the things that are driving revenue, or like keeping people's attention, or have more social share. Whatever your goals are, you can start dissecting. In the world of publishing or news, you can start dissecting, reports based on the author. Like obviously you'd want an author like to be able to have that type of report in Google Analytics, but they don't make it available or out of the box. So how do you start customizing maybe also for the categories of pages or posts, or how do you customize for the keywords or length of blog posts? Wouldn't it be interesting to see at what point of a blog length does it have a material impact on the success of that campaign? So does it require 1,200 words, and compared to 800 words? What are the kind of comparisons there? All sorts of different things that are made available from schema.org. As long as you have that in your markup, you can now bring that into Google Analytics and create a lot of custom reports based on like your business data, which has been missing. So there are ways to get around that in the years past, but I'm really excited about providing that super simply. So you just can kind of state, or as you're onboarding with Schema App in the next several weeks, if you're into e-commerce or if you're into the content industry, you get a bunch of data that can come from your website automatically and through Schema App into Google Analytics, so that you can start dissecting. And then products in that world, like you can start, you can think about all the different reports you can generate on your reports, such as segment by the color of your widgets, or segment by the price, or by the manufacturer, or whether or not there's a video associated, or whether or not there's more than 10 images. There's lots of different ways you can slice the data so that you can better inform your future product marketing. And so I'm just excited of the possibility of how simple this can be for users and for marketers, so that they can just, with the click of a button, maybe 5 minutes of time, they can then have all these reports readily available in analytics. So that's pretty exciting part. Another thing that I don't hear much talk about is in the area of schema, where the structured data that you provide for your content can also be used in other ways. So for a in-app search. So if you think about in WordPress, for example, there's I would say a fairly rudimentary keyword type of algorithm for ranking the blogs and articles in the out of the box WordPress search. But if you can also consider that all of these articles also have the author, the length, the number of comments, maybe some ratings, the pictures, all the different things that you can put in schema.org can also be made available in a search filter, so that you can do some more kind of faceted search out of just based on the schema data. So the way in which you're kind of interacting with these sites and services is it can be definitely improved just by reusing schema in these different ways. So those are just these are just a couple of ideas that are kind of emerging, and there's lots more that can come out. Schema can also be used for competitive intelligence. So there's companies that have product pricing intelligence, so that they'll just say if you have a certain line of products, that they'll monitor the prices of all the competitors, and it's fairly easy to consume schema.org data, so that you can think of how many applications there are in that area, and I think it just goes on. So making it available to the public means you're also making it available for other types of new use cases that have yet to emerge. And with the Internet of Things, I think there's opportunity galore in that space as well, because again, it's a common vocabulary. You don't have to map any of the concepts. So yeah, it's an exciting time just with all those extra uses, and it all started with a rich snippet for a recipe.
Excellent. Mark, if people want to get hold of you or ask you questions, or debate and discuss sort of where they think Schema.org is going, how do they best get hold of you?
So I'm on Twitter, pretty easy to get hold of there, at @vberkel, as well by email, mark@hunchmanifest.com, and or my site's at hunchmanifest.com, but also at schemaapp.com. So I'm behind there somewhere. So if you send a support request, you can find me, but probably Twitter's the quick way to get a hold of me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your thoughts on where you think Schema.org is going, and sort of how you came up with Schema App. Thank you for joining us for today's Schema Stories, and watch for our next interview next week. Thanks, and have a great day.